YouTube video. They want to do what I read in January video. The books that I read this month are, I think, not my typical books that I read. You know, mostly I read fantasy, but this month I read a lot of classics and also some different ones which I have never read before. At least, you know, not that kind of genre. So we're going to start. The first book I read this month was a non-fiction book. I normally don't read non-fiction, but there's a specific reason why I read this. It's The Wonderful World of James Herriot. I read that because I started watching the series All Creatures Great and Small, the newer one, and the series is based on the books by James Herriot. And this is kind of like, this is not the first book, this is like kind of a collection of his stories to different topics. Like they're extracts out of his books, and they're like kind of like explanations to them and how it was in real life for him and who the characters were inspired by. So it's kind of like an insight into the real world. But yeah, it's actually quite funny how much of his real life he put into the books. Yeah, so I really like this, and actually I now said what it's about. It's about a veterinary vet in the Yorkshire Dales in the 30s. Yeah, it's very funny, but also heartwarming, and yeah, I just love it. And also the show is so good. I definitely recommend that too. Then I read a book from Ellen Montgomery, which wrote Anne of Green Gables. And I've never read any of her other books outside of the Anne of Green Gables series, so this was my first one, and it's Emily of New Moon. This is the first book in a trilogy, and I liked it. It was also very whimsical and, you know, very nature inspired, same like with Anne of Green Gables. But I have to say, I'm not as much a fan of it as with Anne of Green Gables, just because I think the characters in Anne of Green Gables are just way more likable than in Emily of New Moon. No, it doesn't matter if it's like friends or mother figure or the boys. I mean, how could you toggle life? That's not possible. So yeah, I liked it, but it was definitely not as good as I thought it would be. But I will probably still be reading the other two books. So I gave it 4 stars. And then I've read Miss Marple novel. I've read Agatha Christie Miss Marple at Bertram's Hotel. Yes. It's about like a hotel which still looks like a hotel in the Victorian times, but this plays during, I'm not sure if it plays after World War II. I'm sure. I think so. So it's kind of like a hotel where everything like kind of like from the past, and there happens some weird stuff and some weird coincidences, and there's Miss Marple, and you know, she tries to solve it. Yeah, I mean, I always love Miss Marple novels. I think it's like my 10th one, I don't know. I'm very excited. I loved it, and I definitely would give it like 4 stars, just because they're funny, but not funny, but like cozy crime books. Yeah, just I would like that. Yeah, also they're way better than them. I mean, I like them series, but they always change things in the Miss Marple movies or series, whatever you want to call it, and it's like such unnecessary things, because I know that in the movie of this book there literally dies a person which doesn't die or even exist in this book. So like I was like, how, yeah. Then I've read The Unmaking of June Farrow. It's the first book I've read by Adrian Young. It's like magic realism, I think that's what it's called. It's about June Farrow, which lives in 2023 and in North Carolina, and they have like a thriving flower farm, and they're kind of like outsiders because, you know, a lot of people look weird at them because, you know, they have such a thriving flower farm. And there's something happening with all the Farrow women, you know, like her mom vanished, and her grandma is like kind of like mad, and then she like tries to solve this, what happens to her family, and then she finds about secrets of her what's called town, and there's also a little bit of a love story, kind of like star-crossed love. I really did enjoy it. I gave it 4.5 stars because, yeah, it was kind of crazy, and it was kind of like crazy too. They were like different timelines, and it was kind of not difficult to understand, but it was just a little bit confusing at times. But yeah, I still really enjoyed it, and I was also thinking about reading other books from her, because there's also the Spells of Forgetting series and Fable. So yeah. The last book I read this month was the first James Harriet book, which is called All Creatures Great and Small, like the TV show. And yes, this is the first book, you know, which plays in the 1930s, and it's about James Harriet. He graduated at the veterinary college in Glasgow, and now he searches for a job, and he gets a job in Yorkshire Dales in Derby, and his kind of like boss is Secret Farnan, and he's like kind of like eccentric and kind of like crazy. And there's also his brother Tristan was kind of like lazy, and they were like always kind of like fighting, or most like Secret is always calling Tristan, and yeah, it's very funny. And you know how he deals with the farmers, the animals, or for example also Mrs. Pumphrey, who is a rich woman, and who has a Pekingese dog called Trikibu, and how she treats him like a child, and how she says like, oh, look Tricky, it's your Uncle Harriet, you know. So it's very funny. Yeah, Harry heartwarming. Also meets a great girl called Helen. So it's definitely very cool, heartwarming, like a story about love, friendship, nature, so everything that you need in life. I would definitely recommend that. So these were all the books that I read this month. I would say I'm quite happy that I read 5 books. Could be better, it could be worse, so I'm happy. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and you should definitely try out these books. Bye!